Hello everybody, welcome back. So just come back from this tournament in Balaton, which is largest lake in Hungary. Actually largest lake in Central Europe. So I wanted to show some of the games that I had in that tournament. It was a little bit of a disaster for me, this tournament. So like round one I played against this guy Ivanisevic. I'm just going to show you like a critical position. Yeah. So I think what happened to me in this tournament, there were two reasons why I didn't do very well. Well, maybe I'm not very good at chess is one of them. Which obviously that's open to debate, but people were just better than me. But I think partly it was like rust because I hadn't played for a long time, and I hadn't played like a proper tournament for like a month maybe. I've played rapid plays and stuff like that, but like proper over the board classical tournament. I think the other reason was I probably played too much blitz before this tournament. My speed was off. I was playing too quickly. I was sort of like my weakness tends to be that I play too superficially at times. I've mentioned this before that when games get critical, I tend to speed up when you should be trying to slow down, and then I often collapse. And I would say the other reason, so my speed was off. I was playing too quickly, too superficially. And I would say if there was one other reason, it was possibly because I had a very long journey. Obviously, you love to make excuses. I love to make excuses. But so to get there, I flew from Gatwick because Gatwick was, you fly with Wizz Air, it's direct, cheaper. So Wizz Air, I believe they're possibly a subsidiary of something like EasyJet or Ryanair. I'm not sure exactly. I mean, they operate out of Gatwick. Gatwick is the primary hub for EasyJet in Europe, I believe, or in England at least. And so Wizz Air is like a sort of like Polish-Hungarian type, or just a Hungarian airline maybe. So I flew out with them to Budapest. So I got to Gatwick about 8ish that day because normally they tell you, you got to have like at least 2 or 3 hours. So I decided to be like 3 hours early just in case. I got there for about 8ish to the maybe 8:15, 8:20. The flight was due off about 11:20, but then I got a message on my phone saying we delayed by 2 hours. So I was there at so we left at about 1, then got into Budapest, got the bus. Ended up at Delhi train station. This is quite late by this point. It would have been about sort of 6ish. I ended up getting the train about 7ish. So I got into the hotel about 9 o'clock in the evening. So I'd already been travelling for over probably about 12 hours at that point. Been on the go. And obviously you're playing tough opposition. If I'd done the tournament again, I'd probably gone like a day early. Like just to recover from that long journey because it's a long journey, and but obviously the organisers might not want to do that, right? You'd have to pay the hotel yourself. So anyway, the tournament was held in a place called Lake Balaton. It was Lake Balaton. So the town itself was called Balaton. There's lots. So you basically get the train from Budapest, and it goes to all these Balatons. Balatonis, Balatonat, right? And but the town itself is a really nice town. It's like a touristy town. Stayed in a hotel. Hotel wasn't that great. I thought it was like the internet wasn't great because there's probably so many people trying to prepare at the same time. You notice a lot of people go down to reception to prepare. That's probably what I should have done. I was kind of lazy. You get your fee, there's no prize money, so it's like, what are you playing for? I'm kind of lazy anyway. So I played round 1. I'm playing this guy, Ivanisevic. And earlier in the game, I'd been losing. Like I played quite poorly. And then we got to this position. I kind of recovered a little bit. But, at this point, I've got to spend some time. And I saw that rook c8 was a move. And when he goes there, you can maybe attack the bishop, for example. And actually, you're sort of like... But I saw bishop h4, and I thought, actually, this doesn't look very good anyway. I thought he's just going to win c6, h3. and it didn't look that great. So I thought, that's why I rejected this variation. But for example, maybe you can just go here. And when he takes, you take. Now, is he winning that position? Possibly not. What's the computer saying? Yeah, it's not actually winning. So even though he's 2 pawns up, he's got bad coordination. It looks close to winning, but it's not actually winning. So that's what I could have done. But instead, I played quite quickly here, almost like just to show, look, I'm fine here. There's no problems. I'm going to go here because I saw a variation. And I thought, this is fine. I go here, he takes, I go check. So I saw up to this when I played rook c6, and I went check, and I saw all this, and I even saw king h6. And this is where I should have taken the calculation a little bit further. So often people say, grandmasters, it's all exaggerated, that you don't calculate that far ahead. You only calculate 2 or 3 moves just to check whether there's any tactics, whether you're losing tactically. That's very true, but there are some instances where you do need to calculate that a little bit further. And this was one of them. Because how many moves have we had since rook c6? Okay, it's not that difficult to calculate all this anyway, because it's all forcing moves pretty much. So there's 1 move, 2 moves, 3 moves, 4 moves, 5 moves, 6 moves. So to calculate 6 moves ahead. But now I got to this position, I thought, well, bishop e3 will possibly work, bishop f8 will work. But then when I got to this position, I realised actually nothing works. I'm just losing. Partly what I missed was after bishop e3, instead of going g5, which allows king f5, and then I'm doing pretty well, I think. For example, if he goes here, instead of even taking, I think you can take here, and this is more or less an immediate draw because of rook check. And then you take the bishop, because then his h pawn is not going to be supported by the king, so I would manage to draw this very easily. I would have thought rook c3, for example, is one way to draw. Pretty much every move draws at this point. But the problem is, of course, he just goes bishop g5. And I thought, well, somebody like bishop c5 or bishop d4 is going to save me, but it didn't. And I should have spent more time at that moment earlier when I went rook c6. I'm playing a very strong player, by the way. I think he's already been over 2600. Similar age to me, slightly younger, but very, very strong, and quite a famous name in chess. I think he tied for first in the end, or he kind of had his ups and downs in the tournament. He said to me after the game that he actually lost about 100 points immediately after COVID finished, which or around about that period, which is not untypical. But after h4, yeah, because suddenly his king is getting out. So I'm basically busted at this point. So I tried king here, but then he goes check. I think that's the only move to win, actually. Or one of the only moves, possibly. Maybe he's got something else. I don't quite see what else he can play. But yeah, rook check is just an easy win now. Because I can't go here because his mate immediately. So basically hoovered up at this point. And I'm flapping around. Lots of ways to win. I thought he could even take. I'm sure he definitely considered it. I was actually expecting him to go there in that position, which is also winning. Just the idea of not even allowing the king in. I would have resigned immediately, but pretty much what he played was also forcing me to resign. So he went h3, and now if I go here, he can take, for example, is winning. Yeah, I think here, I think he's just going to take, and then he'll come in with a king, and then I can't stop the pawn. I think there's other ways to win as well there. In fact, bishop h4, I think that was what he was intending. Yeah, also possible as well, right? Because he's threatening to take and then queen. In fact, sorry, I think the line I saw in the game is quite a while since was this line. Well, I can't stop the pawn now. I'm going to have to bring the rook around, but he's then going to be able to... He's still got the g pawn, this is the important point. Something like this is going to win, and then just push the pawn. It's a very simple win anyway. So I lost that game, disappointing. Then round 2 I lost as well. And this game was a game that I should have drawn. I just quickly get to the critical position. It's ironic actually that two of the blunders I made in this tournament were both around about the same square. So we got all this, and in fact I didn't like my position here. Apparently this move is good. And I thought in the game, I thought well, he goes here and then he takes. And I saw rook e8. And again, this is why sometimes you need to calculate that a little bit further. Because e5, and I thought, well, if I go knight d5, he goes queen e4. Right? And I'm just busted. But in fact, you then go knight f6. And in fact, you're okay. So, you know, variations like this sort of like eluded me. So I went knight g4. I wasn't very happy with that move. I mean, I was even concerned that he might even just do this, right? And then do like Leela style, where he's just going to go for like an all-out attack on the king side. But I don't think it was actually that great to do this. But it was something that I was concerned about. But he went, played a different way. And we eventually got an endgame which was more or less equal, and black was fine. Yeah, so basically I realised that if I kept the game going, kept the rooks on, that he might have chances because of this extra pawn on the king side and the fact my pawns are doubled. So I decided to immediately exchange rooks, which involves some kind of risk, because I realised I was losing the b pawn when I played this variation, so I did calculate that far at least. But I thought that I might be holding this. In fact, I am, yeah, and it's actually fairly easy to hold. And I think I worked out during the game why I was holding. But my opponent's confidence, self-confidence of the board. So he's a young Indian player. He lost in round one as well. But he played pretty well in this game. I mean, he didn't really make any serious errors. And he put me under pressure. He played confidently. But there was a moment where... So basically he's trying to get the pawns going a little bit on the king's side to try and at least make some progress. Because e5 always take. And if he tries to come around here and here, I can always just come back and defend the pawn. And he can never come in on via the queen side. So I'd kind of figured all that out during the game. So I'm not quite sure why I blew up like I did. Maybe it was the heat. But yeah, so this is a critical moment. So I took. Okay, so now I should need to be calm. And instead I played a move again far too quickly. And I'm probably still stuck in this blitz mode. If I just wait here, like, what is the problem? Oh, maybe actually thinking about it now. Maybe I was worried about... Yeah, the point is that e5 is never working. It's close to working, but it's never quite working. Say, for example, he goes here, threatening this. Well, first he loses his pawn anyway, so he can't do that. Let's say he goes here. And I go here, and now he goes here. So now he is threatening to take. And if I go king e5, maybe his a pawn is quicker than my f pawn's going to be. Even that's debatable, right? But probably would be, yeah? But if I now go here, how is he actually going to win? If I just wait. Or let's just wait with this move. And now when he goes here, now we go here. Can he break through? This is a key point in the whole variation. Can he break through on this king side? I don't think he can. I don't think he can win on the king side. Actually, he could try this and go here with the idea that this might work, but I don't think it quite works because of bishop a2. And then I'll just come back with a bishop. So he doesn't quite get there. It's close, but he doesn't quite get there. But the thing is, all that required some calculation. And I was, I was like tired, or just lazy, really. And another thing I was concerned about was if he would go g6 at some point. So say, for example, I took that. That was the losing error. So let's say I go here and he goes, let's say he's g6, and then he just waits. And now he comes back with a king. Of course, I could put the bishop on a2 to even maybe prevent that maneuver. But now, let's say I made a bishop again, and now he comes here, and I come here, and he goes here. This is another thing that concerned me. I thought this might be winning. But again, it's just calculation. It's just pure calc. It doesn't work because after this, in fact, you can even take because you have this move. And then maybe you're the one who's trying to press and win the game. Who knows? Probably, I think it's still a draw because his pawn's too far advanced. But yeah, all this required a calculation, but basically it was a draw. So I'd essentially set up the right idea, but then I kind of lost faith in my idea, and then I took. And I thought, oh, this is a draw anyway, without having to really calculate, because, you know, I've got this G-pawn. But I underestimated how bad this position was. And this slow plan, and again, it's come down to like having a bit more long calculation. Because he had this slow plan of now moving the bishop. So now he's threatening, he could pretty much force his position. Now he's threatening king g4. So I think I'd seen this earlier and thought, well, bishop d1 holds, because if he goes back to g4, c2. But again, I didn't spend enough time on it. I should have a really critical moment to take on g5. Really critical moment. And he goes here, and then, yeah, I'd seen it. By the time I took on g5, or a couple of moves after, I'd seen this maneuver and saw that he was winning, basically. Because now he's threatening bishop f3. If I go bishop h5, he goes bishop f3. And the point is that if I move the bishop back, he goes king g4. So say, for example, if I go here, he goes here. Now, if I come back with a bishop, he goes king g4. Now, if I play me like g6, I did calculate this in the game, g6, with the idea of trying to exchange the pawns off. Now, he can take and go king g4, and possibly that's also winning. Because after king e6, he goes king takes g6. Sorry, king takes g5, hitting the bishop, and then he comes back to f4. Because I'm not going to be quick enough to try and exchange the pawns on the queen side. But I also thought he can just win immediately with f6, and this is just game over. Because if I go here, he goes bishop check. And his pawns are rolling. And if I come back, well, he can win in many different ways, but he can probably just go... It's entirely possible that bishop h5 and then bring the king round is going to be too quick, but probably just like e6 is just an easy win, or bishop d5, or pretty much any move. So I realised that. So I realised things are getting desperate. So I have to put the pawn on g4. But unfortunately, this position is now lost, and for me. But I think here as well, I was getting tired and stupid, and realised that this is a threat. I didn't realise that bishop g8 was a threat, and I should have gone king f8, which would at least force him to play. I think at some point he just goes here, and maybe not immediately. How does he win again? Yeah, I think f6 immediately is also good, because this... The point is that he goes here, and then he takes here with tempo. This is a very important point. So he can defend this pawn. So he has time to bring his king up. So this is actually a very easy win as well. It doesn't require that much calculation. So I realised I'm cooked at this point, so I played this. And very nice idea that I'd completely missed. I think there's other ways to win, but basically the idea is to bring the bishop round to h5, and there's nothing I can do. And I can't put the bishop on c2 either, because f6 is going to win the bishop. So basically I played on, and I realised I'm totally cooked. And now he's also threatening e7 and just take the pawn is one way to win. And he could have possibly even done that here as well. But he went f6 and I resigned, because if I take, I can't stop f6, and eventually he's going to be able to win the bishop, and then he can win the b pawn. If you take the b and a pawns off the board, it's obviously a draw, but you can't. So I lost that game. So obviously you're starting with 0 out of 2, you're kind of in free fall there, and you're panicking. I did win in round 3, so that was a good bounce back win, won in round 3. But then in round 4, had a quick draw. That was probably a mistake as well, not because necessarily had a great chance against my opponent, but also possibly because I won that game in round 3. I had momentum then, and I'd sort of like violated the rule of Kayasa, where, you know, you take the quick draw, you're destroying your own momentum. And potentially, if I'd have won both games that day, I'd have been on a real high. I could have finished the tournament a bit better than I did. So I played this guy, Zalan Nemeth. Okay, I'm going to show you what happened at the end of the game. So at some point, I was winning. At this moment, I'm winning the game. So it cuts off here, but I don't know why it cuts off, because there were more moves. I went F5. And my opponent fought for a while, and I saw him reaching for his G pawn. So I'm getting nervous because I see he's intending to go G6. I'm thinking, well, firstly, I'm thinking at this point in the game, I'm already thinking I'm going to win the game at this point, because I've got this pawn wedge on E6, which is huge, right? He can't take on A2 because of E7 wins a rook. So he's going to have to go King E7 before he's threatening to take on A2. So I see him reaching for the G pawn, and I'm thinking, if he goes G6, well, can't I just go G5? And when he takes on G5, you go F6 and you win the game. Because my mind's already leapt ahead. Mentally, I've already bagged the win, right? And I'm nervous. My nerves are taken over. So he starts reaching G pawn. I'm like, you know, stay super still. So don't give it away. That is a blunder. And he goes G6. So then I'm like, yeah, you know, let's just check, double check. G5 wins, blah, blah, blah. And of course, very, very stupid decision to play G5. I've got 30 minutes left on the clock at this point, plus increment. That's just to get to time control. So I think we're on move. Yeah, I mean, pretty much on move 40 anyway. So we've got extra time as well, just to rub it in even more. That I had all the time in the world to come up with a better solution after G6. So, for example, it's still quite complicated. So, instinctively, I wanted to go King G2 as well, because he can't take and hit the pawn because of E7. And he can't take and take the pawn because of E7. So he's probably going to have to go King E7 first. Now you go Rook D1. Now he takes the pawn. So I think if he hits this pawn, you just go check. And I think you're winning after this, because you've got too many pawns. You're 2 pawns up. And you've got three passed pawns. You've got the A pawn, you've got the H pawn, you've got the E pawn. That's too much for black. So his best line of defence is Rook A2. So even though he ends up in a level pawn position, it's a very bad one for him, because my king is very active. The computer does I think, agree with me that this is winning, although it's maybe not the best line when you start with the original position. I could have gone A3. That was another way to play, for example. In fact, the computer, I think, says that E7 is the best. And you actually just let him win the E-pawn. But I don't really think that is the practical way to play. But it's still winning, because you're winning on the king side. You know, so technically it's a win. It's a winning game. You're just going to slowly advance on the king side. Maybe Rook H5, G5, or maybe just G5, H4, King F3. Can't really attack my A and B pawns that easy. If you move the Rook up to E4, go Rook F7. So effectively, it's a winning position. So instead of that, I just, you know, this really stupid thing of letting the nerves take over, and I went G5 without even thinking. And of course, he finds the only move. He plays it fairly quickly, and as soon as he went King E7, I just had this horrible feeling, like, what have I just done? Like, what have I just done? It's just total, like, panic at that point. So I sat there really gloomy, thinking I've blown this right. And I did something I'd never done before, which is offer a draw when it's my opponent's turn to move. Oh, sorry, when it's my turn to move. Because normally you're supposed to play a move and then offer a draw. But I was so depressed that I didn't even bother. Now, I think this is a draw anyway, because, for example, if you take and then take... well, you're not... he's not threatening to do this, so you could just go A3, but then he comes up with a rook. What's the evaluation here? Yeah, this is just... I mean, yeah, this is also a draw. But you have to calculate this, and given my gloomy state of affairs, I could have even imagined losing it. So I was so depressed. Obviously very, very depressed by my G5 terrible blunder. So it's two games where I blundered with G5. Round 6 I was pressing against 2400 player, but I didn't manage to win. But I was spending 5 hours on that game. So then I played the bottom seed who hadn't won a game but up to this point. And I resigned. So basically, finished the game. It was like a 5-hour game. Finished about 25-3. The round 7 game was due to start at 3 o'clock. So I thought there might be a delay of half an hour on the game, but there wasn't. I could have maybe asked for half an hour, but I just wanted to get on with it at that point. In some ways, I quite enjoyed the fact there wasn't a delay because I just wanted to get on with it. I didn't want to sit around in a hotel room worrying about the game. Hotel room's about 10-minute walk from the venue, you know, or sit around on a park bench worrying about the game. I just wanted to get on with the next round because, you know, that's what you want to do. But I had some food and I think I kind of crashed, you know, like sugar wise. I had like a sugar crash because I suddenly didn't felt like really tired at the board during this game. My opponent played pretty well. He put me under a lot of pressure. So all this was slightly unusual, and I probably should have just castled, to be honest, and let him get on with his G4 stuff. And he'd have got an a unique, unusual position. Would have been complex. I think D5 was a bit of a cop-out move, but it's still okay. Possibly could have traded at this point. Might have been safer. My opponent was playing pretty quickly. You know, he was a pretty fast player. A lot of Indian players were quite tactical as well. I could sense he was quite a tactical player. So I went E5, and I felt quite comfortable at this point. I thought if he takes, I'm going to take with a knight. But he castled. Yeah, at this point, actually, I should have gone A5, and that was a move that I instinctively felt was quite a good move, but I didn't play it. I think the reason I didn't play it is I thought this is not really a threat because he's just going to go into C5, but I think I missed that. Whenever he goes into C5, you take on F4. So this position is a little bit complicated because if you go like Rook D8, it can go wrong because Queen F2, and then he's... So it's actually quite, you know, complex position. I went there as soon as I played out. I thought, well, what happens if he goes F5 because he's playing very quickly and confidently. I thought he could find F5, and then if I take on F5, he takes on C6. So already I'm making mistakes because I'm missing F5 when I went Bishop E6. So that's already a bad move. He went King H1. The position probably slightly bad for White at this point, but I think he slightly misplayed it. Now I'm doing quite well. And he went 94 instantly, and again I was like, yeah, you know, what is all this? Played so quickly, yeah, it's kind of like upsetting, even though his moves weren't that great, they were quite quick, yeah. It's putting you under pressure on the clock. So here I should have gone Rook D3, and I'm doing quite well. And I saw Rook D3, but for some reason I must have misevaluated it. I never was worried about this move, but I can go here. Or possibly I was worried about B3, but apparently I can go here. Knight B6 is also quite good for black, because you can put the Rook on E8. And black actually ends up getting quite a good position, apparently. Actually, yeah, I think there's one line like this. And how does it go? You end up, sorry, if I go, yeah, Rook D3, right? Yeah, so some line like this is actually exactly what you're aiming for. F6, and you just got a very, very comfortable game because you just go like Bishop C6. And it's almost like a risk-free push, you know, Bishop C6, Rook D8. A very nice game for black, like Rook D3. You know, you're very safe here. This is kind of what you want, right? You've got this supported passed pawn. Potentially there's going to be a long-term strategic advantage for black. But instead of that, I started panicking a little bit. You know, went knight a4 so confidently. I went there. So I went rook d6, which is like a panic move. That wasn't the way to get the advantage. Because actually, when he went knight a4, I was expecting to go knight e4. And then I was just going to go probably f6. And I thought, well, you know, fairly comfortable, right? Actually, queen c6 was another move I was considering. That's actually slightly better. Yeah, bishop d3 ideas. Very comfortable for black. So when he went knight a4, that kind of threw me a little bit. And also he was doing that kind of thing where you're sort of sitting there looking bored. This is so easy. You know, I was getting like, when you're playing well, you don't get affected by that. But when you're struggling, and I was feeling really tired, stuff like that, a little bit of the psychology is throwing me off. So, yeah, I went there. And he took and went knight b6. Yeah, at this point, I should have just gone for the endgame and just said, look, this is not that great for me. But I started becoming worried about lines like this. And then I thought, if I go e4, he takes on e4 because of the back rank. You know, and it looked a bit tricky for me. I can't actually remember what the move is here. Rook d4 is, yeah, I'm slightly worse there. But instead of that, I decided to go e4, and he went knight d5 instantly. I went queen e5. He went rook d1 or rook h6, h3, and now I just resigned, which of course is a crazy decision, right? But somehow I overestimated how bad the position was. And obviously you don't resign this is like silly. But I thought he's going rook e3, rook g3. This is like +3 already. He's threatening rook d3, winning a piece. My rook on h6 can't move. So I'm just like mentally assessing the position as busted, right? And I'm thinking I'm just going to lose this game, right? I just want to get out of it and just, you know, go back to the room, and I'm just tired. I'm played for 5 hours in the morning. I'm too old to play like 2 games a day now. So I just resigned the game, which obviously was a shock to my opponent. But yeah, that was a disappointing game as well. So there were a number of games where basically, if you look at the games, I missed the chances. And I think mainly down to a lack of playing recently. When you're more kind of in the zone, you take your chances. When you don't play much, you start to make, you know, I just made strange decisions. I mean, some people, I mentioned this before, even older players can sort of come out of the starting blocks and just play at the same level they've always played at. I'm not one of those players. I think because I'm an intuitive player, it takes me a while to really get into the, you know, it's like when I played Blitz. When I started playing that Blitz online a few weeks ago, or a couple of weeks ago, before I went to Budapest, I wasn't playing very well. At the start, I was playing pretty poorly. But then by the end, I was playing like high 2700s, like on lead chess, you know. I went below 2600 at one point. So it's the same sort of thing, you know. But yeah, overall, I don't want to make excuses, but I feel like what you're looking for when you play chess is your best possible performance. You know, you're looking for what is the absolute best that you can do, right? And this is like almost like the worst that I could do, right? You know, this is like all the bad stuff, all the superficial stuff, the missing really obvious stuff, terrible blunders, getting depressed, demoralised. So going forward, I'll have to have a think about whether I want to play like 2 games a day tournaments anymore, because, you know, I'm really struggling in the afternoon games, and also if I am going to carry on playing chess, I need to play like be constantly playing, and then you're not falling into that kind of category of being rusty, because that was really evident in that tournament that I made a number of very poor errors. And but anyway, credit to my opponents. So overall, I think joint winners were this guy Tamas, who I played last. I lost to him in the last round. That was also an interesting game. And David Burks was leading going to the last round, but he lost to Ivan Izovic. So I think those two were joint leaders. I don't think anyone got a GM norm. I think Tamas, if he won his last two, he would have got one. But he lost in round 8 against David. I think Peter Balaton is also quite a good young player from Austria. He narrowly missed out. I'm not sure if Divik from India got an IM norm. Certainly he's probably going to be a GM in the future anyway. Yeah, so that was my assessment. There's also a nice guy, Adrian Gritschner from Germany, so possibly got some Swiss heritage because he was wearing a Swiss. That was another moment where I was kind of out of it during the tournament, right? You know, when I played Gritschner, I sat down at the wrong board and shook the wrong person's hand. And then after the final game, I went up to my opponent after the game outside the tournament hall in the sort of like reception bit and started talking about the game. And then I realised it wasn't my opponent, it was like a lookalike. So that was embarrassing as well. So yeah, it's like at some point you feel like out of it and you're like, where's the motivation? So it's quite hard playing these kind of like norm events where they're set up for people to make norms. Because, you know, you get your fee, which is great, but your motivation is, what's your motivation? There's no prize money. You know, you're going to get your fee, whatever your score. In fact, in some ways, it's actually better for you to do badly because that's going to help people to get norms. But obviously, you want to give your best so that they can prove that they're of that strength. So I was trying to give my best, but I just struggled with the motivation. I don't like preparing now. The internet in the hotel wasn't very good, so it's very hard to prepare specifically for the games, and I just find preparing for games so boring anyway. Whereas I know, or I can guess, that they probably did a lot of preparation. The other player, the younger players, did a lot of preparation for the games, both before the event and during the event. So, anyway, those are my thoughts about the tournament. But overall, yeah, if you ever get a chance to visit Lake Balaton, it's a beautiful area, beautiful part of the world. It's the largest central lake in Europe. It's about 2 hours on the train from, or an hour and 40 minutes from Budapest until you start getting to the edges of Lake Balaton. It goes on and on for miles and miles and miles. It's quite, you can actually paddle in the lake. It's a what's it called, a shallow lake. But it's also becoming vulnerable to global warming because, fish are dying. Actually, when I went down the first time, I saw like a dead fish there, but I possibly might have died for other reasons anyway. Fish do die, obviously. But, I mean, it's such a beautiful place. And it's like a touristy town. So, you know, you've got lots of restaurants where you can, little cafes where you can sit down. So, I mean, overall, I really enjoyed the experience. But the chess was a total disaster. So obviously you have to think, if I play that again in the future, I'd have to have a different strategy and maybe do a bit more preparation, play a bit more before the event. Anyway, those are some of the games that I played in that tournament in Hungary. Thanks for watching.